Don't touch that file, I snapped without looking up. Connor froze mid-step, his gelled hair catching the overhead fluorescence like a nervous porcupine. He'd been poking around the secure archive again, badge tilted like he thought he was on an episode of Succession. What he didn't realize was that the file he was about to access contained level 5 protocols with rotating clearance timestamps. One wrong move, and the system would trigger a federal security breach alert before his little Fitbit could count his next 10 steps. He backed off, huffing some line about transparency and modernizing workflows, and I didn't even bother responding. The only thing Connor had modernized in the last 3 months was his LinkedIn profile, which now read, VP Strategic Accounts and Legacy Transition, even though the ink hadn't dried on his welcome email. And I was the legacy. That legacy? A $640 million federal security contract. Not flashy, not loud, but woven into every bolt of the company's infrastructure like Kevlar. It wasn't a job, it was a living system of permissions, behaviors, embedded logic, and just enough paranoia to keep the Pentagon happy. 17 years, 3 presidents, 9 executive turnovers, 1 war, 2 drawdowns, and a dozen NDA updates that would make your head spin. And through all that, I stayed behind the curtain. No golf photos, no step-in repeats, just precision, trust, and protocols. I'd been the silent fulcrum holding the whole operation together. My badge didn't say director because titles didn't keep systems clean. People did. People who knew which digital signature expired when, who understood that compliance wasn't just some buzzword tossed around in a quarterly slide deck. It was the difference between a $3 million fine and an uninterrupted supply chain for encrypted satellite modules. Before we go on, can I ask a small favor? If you're listening and haven't subscribed yet, take 2 seconds and hit that button. And maybe drop a like if this story already hooked you. It keeps the stories coming and helps the team keep digging up more like this. Thank you. It seriously means the world to us. Now, where were we? Oh, right. Connor. The first time he shadowed me in a meeting, he brought a fidget spinner. I'm not kidding. Sat there across from a classified contract liaison, who, by the way, served 2 tours in Intel and kept that stupid plastic turbine whirring like he was negotiating vending machine rights at a middle school. I glanced at him once, said nothing, and let the silence do the scolding. The client noticed. He always noticed. Connor was the owner's son, fresh out of Wharton and drunk on TED Talks. The kind of kid who talked about disruption without knowing the first damn thing about how actual systems stayed stable. His idea of risk mitigation was running simulations on ChatGPT. Mine? Knowing which phone call not to return at 4:01 p.m. on a Friday, because the timestamp alone would trigger an audit cascade. It started subtle. Fewer meeting invites. My monthly risk summaries getting forwarded to his inbox for visibility. Then came the Slack message I wasn't meant to see. His dad to him. She's solid, but we need a new image. Start thinking transition. Transition? I had memorized more clearance code suffixes than Connor had eaten hot meals since moving back from New York. Still, I didn't panic. Legacy doesn't panic. Legacy watches. Legacy logs access. Legacy updates keys. Then came the Friday meeting. Just a quick sync, Connor chirped as he pinged me in the hallway, flashing his fake executive smile. That's when I noticed his watch. Rolex. Still had the protective film on it. That meant he was dressing for show, dressing for power, and someone had handed him enough rope to think he'd built a bridge. I walked into the boardroom and paused. Something was off. The owner was there, so was the director of HR, and 2 junior compliance officers who barely knew how to boot the PKI console. A screen displayed my full client roster and clearance trail. My stomach dropped. Not from fear, but insult. They were trying to package my life's work into a PowerPoint. Let's make this quick, the owner said, like he was trying to get ahead of something uncomfortable. I didn't sit down. You've done incredible work, he said. Voice smooth as a politician's second apology. But it's time we start transitioning to a new era. Connor will be taking over the flagship account. You've earned a break. A break? I stood still, hands by my sides. 17 years, and I was being dismissed with a nod toward vacation brochures. Connor smiled like he'd won something, like he'd outlasted me in a game he just invented. I didn't say a word, just walked over to the table, placed my badge down, then, almost as an afterthought, set my phone beside it. Unlocked. Face up. Sound on. Then I walked out. No door slam, no parting speech, just silence. The kind of silence that says, you don't even know what you've done yet. There's a very specific kind of humiliation that doesn't come with yelling or cursing. It's the kind that walks in wearing cologne and says your name like it's something stuck in their teeth. That's how the meeting started. The owner, Robert Wexler Sr., leaned back in his leather chair with that smug, this is just business look, the same one he wore when he fired a receptionist for wearing flats on a Monday. We were halfway through a quarterly alignment when he dropped it like a dentist drops bad news. Gently, but with no anesthesia. I want to thank Melissa for her service. 17 years on the flagship, keeping it airtight, but it's time for a new era. He smiled, gestured toward his son like he was unveiling a goddamn Tesla prototype. Connor's going to take point from here. Fresh face. Fresh energy. I stared at the man like he'd just told me my own obituary. Connor, bless his delusional heart, actually waved. I didn't say a thing. Didn't blink. I let the silence stretch. The way you let cheap wine breathe so it doesn't taste like regret. Behind my smile, my molars were grinding. Behind my calm, I was doing math, calculating every access point, every chain of custody, every compliance node that depended on me and me alone. Robert leaned forward, his voice syrupy now. You've done your part. Let Connor handle the future. Let Connor handle the future? Connor, who thought 2FA was a YouTube channel? Connor, who once asked if DOD meant date of delivery. The future was a locked server with 12 rotating encryption schemas, and this idiot couldn't operate a fax machine without Googling, what's a fax? I should have screamed. Should have flipped the table and listed every buried red flag I'd diffused without them ever knowing. But I didn't. Because I'm not made of panic. I'm made of protocols, and those protocols told me exactly how to make an exit. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out my badge. Full clearance, active, with a metadata tag that would trigger half the client's back-end security stack if it went missing. I laid it on the table. Next to it, I placed my phone. Face up, unlocked, quiet as a threat. A Trojan horse in plain sight. Nobody noticed, of course. Connor was already opening his laptop, trying to smile like a man in control. Robert had moved on to discussing brand language and modern optics. I stepped back from the table and looked around the room. 6 executives, 2 HR reps, 1 legacy contract now floating in the hands of a boy who once tried to schedule a client review over brunch. I turned without a word. No handshakes, no thanks. Just the soft tread of my boots on carpet as I walked out, spine straight, jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked a molar. Rage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's so quiet it hurts. Down the hall, I passed by Marcy from logistics. She gave me that awkward half-smile people give when they don't know if they should say congrats or sorry. I nodded and kept walking. Out the front doors, into the sunlight. Behind me, up in that glass-walled room, my phone sat glowing on the conference table like a lit fuse. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The phone rang once, sharp, loud, and way too confident for a forgotten device. Connor was mid-sentence, babbling about fresh deliverables and modern synergy to a room that had already begun peeling away their polite smiles. Everyone turned to the sound. My phone, still resting where I left it, lit up like a flare. The name on the screen didn't say mom or spam risk. It said exactly one thing. Chairman Redford, direct. No one moved. Connor blinked first. Should I? He mumbled, reaching for it like it might explode. He pressed speaker. Melissa? Came the voice, calm, smooth, older, but laced with an authority that could snap necks in the Pentagon. Connor cleared his throat. No, sir. This is Connor Wexler. I'm the new, transitional strategic. The chairman cut him off. Why did you terminate the only person with full spectrum clearance and root access to our security files? The room dropped 10 degrees. I wasn't there to see it, but I've heard enough post-meeting whispers in my life to know what a corporate aneurysm sounds like. Connor chuckled nervously, glancing at his father like this was a quiz he hadn't studied for. I believe we're updating our internal workflows. My father and I thought... I didn't ask what your father thought, the chairman snapped. I asked why you removed the only cleared contact whose audit trail runs unbroken since 2008. There is no valid chain of custody now. No continuity, no access logs, no key rotation schedule. You breached continuity protocol on a $640 million defense contract. HR shifted uncomfortably. One of the junior compliance officers turned pale. Robert Wexler Sr. sat still, the color draining from his face like someone pulled the plug on his bloodstream. Connor stammered. "She left voluntarily." "No, she didn't," the chairman said. "She was dismissed. We're already logging access anomalies on our end, and as of this moment, no one on your team has active credentials to reestablish clearance paths." I think we can resolve that quickly," Connor said, fidgeting with his laptop. "I've got a draft handover doc." "You have a Google Doc," the chairman interrupted, "and a LinkedIn profile that says change agent. You do not have root authority, biometric clearance, or a single valid key store signature. That contract is now non-operational. Until further notice, all operations tied to your company are suspended. This includes procurement, compliance integration, and all federal pipeline access. Good luck explaining that to your insurers." Click. Silence. Real silence. Not the awkward kind after someone says something dumb, the kind that vibrates in your teeth, the kind that smells like toner and regret. Connor didn't move. One of the compliance officers finally spoke. Did he just say suspended? Robert stood up slowly, like he wasn't sure the floor would still support him. "We need to call her." Connor muttered, "She left her phone here." Robert closed his eyes. "Email, then," someone whispered. "She encrypted her inbox," said one of the junior techs. "It's bounced 3 times already. Get it in here now." IT reported earlier that her keys are revoked across our entire infrastructure. She locked her own access before leaving. Clean. Robert snapped. "You said this was a clean transition." Connor didn't respond. He just stared down at the still glowing screen. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes for the facade to crack. 10 minutes for them to realize I hadn't been some clipboard-wielding relic in the back room. I had been the gatekeeper, the architect, the firewall they thought they could replace with a surname. And now they were staring into a $640 million vacuum with no way out. Monday morning hit like a brick through a stained glass window. Connor showed up to HQ 30 minutes early, dressed like a man who thought he still had control. Navy suit, cufflinks, even a fresh haircut that screamed, "Please respect me." He walked into the executive suite with a Bluetooth headset already in his ear, mumbling something about actionable optics to no one in particular. Classic Connor, trying to manifest competence through wardrobe and catchphrases. First order of business, reclaiming the relationship. He told the admin to get Redford on the line. Her face didn't twitch. "Sir, they're not taking our calls." "Fine," Connor replied, pulling up his laptop. "I'll send an email directly. I'll CC his entire compliance team and suggest a virtual touchpoint this afternoon." He did. Subject line, seamless transition and forward-looking strategy. Body, full of fluff about collaboration, evolution, and carrying the torch into the new decade. He even signed it with warm regards. It bounced. Not a delay, not a redirect. A hard bounce. He tried again from his personal Gmail. It bounced harder, this time flagged as spam. Still clinging to optimism, he opened his calendar and sent 3 meeting invites. One to Redford, one to the deputy liaison, one to the back-end systems coordinator. All declined within 5 minutes. No reason given. Just declined. 3 red slashes across his screen like paper cuts to the ego. Legal pinged him at 9:37 a.m. Subject, urgent, contractual access. Authority body, per section 12.3 of the Master Compliance Agreement, MCA, ongoing operations are contingent on an active primary security officer, PSO, of record. As of today, Melissa Langston is the sole federally registered PSO on contract, No. 49177D. No access actions, updates, or workflows may proceed until a successor is vetted and accepted by the client. This process typically takes 4 to 6 months. He stared at it like it was written in Klingon. 6 months? He shouted down the hall, startling an intern. Robert Wexler Sr. appeared in the doorway, lips tight, jaw grinding. What the hell does that mean? Connor read the email aloud, skipping the parts he didn't understand, like PSO and federally registered. Robert rubbed his face like he could wipe away federal regulations with his palm. Call legal. They are legal, Connor snapped, and they're saying we can't move forward without her. But we fired her, Robert hissed. Well, you fired her, Connor muttered. They pulled in the CTO, who started mumbling about root certs and multi-tier permission revocation, none of which Connor understood, and Robert clearly didn't want to. Then came the second memo. Subject: Compliance warning, do not engage without authorization. From Client Compliance Division to Company Redacted, Leadership. Body: all active operations associated with Contract 9491-27D are now under audit hold. Any attempts to override existing clearance tiers will be reported as breach attempts under Section 5 of the Federal Secure Operations Act. Do not attempt to reroute, backfill, or reassign credentials without PSO consent. They printed it out and passed it around the boardroom like a death certificate. Someone on the board finally broke the silence. So, we're frozen? Until we get her authorization, legal said. Yes. Connor looked around, hoping someone else would step in, fix this, pat him on the back and say, "It's okay, champ." But there was no help. Just that long, dragging silence where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. He pulled out his phone and opened Melissa's contact. Still no answer. Still no email. Still no access. Outside the windows, the skyline glittered like nothing was wrong. But inside that boardroom, Connor was learning the difference between inheriting power and earning it. He'd been handed the keys to a kingdom, only to realize the gates didn't recognize him. And the only person who could open them was gone. I didn't turn on the news, didn't open my email, didn't call anyone. I just got home, kicked off my boots, and made a cup of coffee the way I always do. 2 scoops, 1 sugar, ceramic mug that says 1985 Regional Math Olympiad finalist. Not because I was in it, it was my brother's. He left it here years ago, and I always liked how absurdly specific it was. I sat down at the dining table, oak, solid, a little scuffed at the corners from years of sliding briefcases and binders across it, and opened my personal terminal. No fanfare, no announcement. Just typed in the multi-key login and waited for the blinking cursor to become a green status light. My secure cloud booted with a soft chime. 7 panes of data. 3 token dashboards, 1 mirrored alert channel. They were all still green. I hadn't been removed yet. They hadn't even thought to request access termination. Typical. People like Connor thought firing someone meant everything just stopped. Like I ran on batteries and they'd yanked them out. What they didn't understand, what they never understand, is that true control doesn't sit on servers or inside job titles. It lives in the details. It lives in the dozens of cascading dependencies I built, by hand, over nearly 2 decades. I hovered over the credential pane marked Live Ops Contingency AMELLP1. Click. The screen flickered. A prompt appeared. Disable access tokens and archive root signature? I tapped yes and entered my private PIN, and just like that, the final live credentials tied to my name blinked out of the company's access grid. Not in anger, not in vengeance, just protocol. They couldn't impersonate me now, couldn't fake a transition, couldn't backfill clearance without tripping red flags that had hit the DoD's compliance inbox before legal could finish their first excuse. I sat back, took a slow sip of coffee, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. My phone buzzed once. Short, encrypted channel. Only 5 people have that line. They're asking for you directly. No one else. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. I knew what it meant. It wasn't a panic text. It wasn't a request. It was a signal that the client, the real client, the one with eyes inside the defense grid and more sway than half of Congress, was ignoring every executive on that board and asking a simple question. Where's Melissa? I closed the laptop and pushed it aside, walked out back to the patio, sat under the awning as a slow December breeze rattled the wind chimes. No headlines, no former director slams company, no LinkedIn tell-alls, just silence. Exactly how I like it. The thing about quiet isolation is that people mistake it for defeat. They don't realize it's just a prelude. The audit notice hit like a mortar shell. Timestamp? 7:42 a.m., Tuesday. Subject line, urgent, pre-certification review. Contract 4917-MD, sender, Office of Federal Contract Oversight. Recipients, Robert Wexler Sr., Connor Wexler, Compliance CE, Legaloo. CC, Department of Defense Liaison, Homeland Security Compliance Division, Internal Audit Agency. The email was only 4 lines long, but the last one was all that mattered. Primary Security Officer of Record, Melissa Langston. Credentials required by 72-hour deadline. The moment Robert read it, he dropped his phone. Literally, it hit the table and bounced. Connor leaned in to read over his shoulder, lips moving silently as if the words might change if he read them slow enough. "Is this a joke?" he asked no one in particular. Legal didn't laugh. In fact, Legal didn't blink. Their lead counsel, Marta, opened her laptop and pulled up the contract. "They've triggered a Tier 2 audit," she said flatly. "Standard protocol when there's an unannounced personnel change tied to a key clearance position." Connor waved his hands. "But we did announce it. We emailed them. I sent 3 invites." Marta didn't look up. "Invites aren't federal designations. PSO roles aren't something you just update in Slack." "But she doesn't work here anymore," Connor snapped. "Can't we just override the record? File a revision? Something?" Marta finally looked at him, expression neutral but voice sharp. "We can't override federal databases. This isn't LinkedIn. PSO status isn't symbolic. It's cryptographically tied to access logs, credentials, and audit trails. If she's still listed, it's because no formal transfer was accepted." "She left her badge," Connor said, as if that meant anything. "Great," Marta said dryly. "Maybe the Pentagon can use it to get coffee." The room started humming with anxiety. One exec whispered something about exposure. Another checked the shareholder calendar and muttered, "We're 2 weeks out from earnings." Robert Wexler stood in the corner like a statue, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't spoken yet. That was its own kind of panic. Connor pointed toward Marta. "You're legal. Fix it." "We can't fix physics," she barked. Melissa was the backbone of that contract. She was registered with the Defense Clearance Registry, had biometric control of the protocol signature keys, and authored the continuity frameworks they're now auditing. That contract doesn't exist without her. "We're going to fail certification," someone whispered. Connor turned to his assistant. "Schedule a call with the client." "They're not responding," she said. "I've called twice, emailed 3 times. It's a wall." "What about access logs? Can't we just spoof a continuity handover?" The CTO walked in, overhearing just enough to freeze. "We already tried reassigning digital tokens this morning. The system bounced it. Root signature is locked, federally bound to Melissa's credentials. Any attempt to override flags as tampering." "What the hell does that mean?" Connor exploded. "It means," the CTO said, choosing his words carefully, "if you keep pushing, you'll trigger a breach notification." The boardroom went still. Then someone finally asked what they'd all been dreading. "What if we ask her to come back?" Connor laughed, brittle and forced. "No, absolutely not. She left. We moved on." "You fired her," Marta corrected, "and you did it without a succession plan. Now we're 1 email away from federal suspension. If we miss that audit window..." Connor paced like a man in a cage. "Then what? What happens if we miss it?" Marta didn't sugarcoat it. Contract suspension, financial penalties, potential blacklisting. One of the board members leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Why didn't anyone think of this? Why wasn't this flagged? Everyone looked at Connor. He looked at his dad. Robert finally spoke. "She warned us," he said, voice gravel thick. 3 years ago, she built that clause in after the 2019 cyberstrike. Said we needed a named continuity officer with root clearance or the whole thing could get pulled." "And you ignored her?" the board member asked. Robert didn't answer. The air was thick, electric. Someone opened a window. Someone else swore under their breath. A printer beeped from the hallway and made everyone jump. Connor looked pale now, sweat at his collar, voice quieter. "Can we maybe just ask her to sign something?" Marta shook her head. "Melissa doesn't sign anything without understanding every consequence. And right now, she's the only person on Earth who can walk into that audit and pass it." The board member leaned in. Then I suggest we start groveling. Robert Wexler had made a career out of speaking with authority. He was the kind of man who didn't ask twice, didn't wait for callbacks, didn't knock unless cameras were watching. The day he promoted his son over me, he didn't even look up when he said it, just read his lines like he was ordering from a drive-through menu, too distracted to realize he was torching the one bridge his entire company stood on. Now he was dialing the number he hadn't used in years. Ring, ring, voicemail. You've reached Melissa Langston. If this is urgent, you know what channels to use. If you don't, then it's probably not. He hung up without leaving a message. Tried again. Ring, ring, voicemail. This time, he left a few seconds of silence before hanging up, as if the absence of his voice might say more than anything he could admit out loud. Then he did something completely out of character. He got in his black Escalade, drove across the bridge, and pulled up in front of my modest two-story home in Delacroix Hills. No security gate, no assistant, no script. Just a 68-year-old man with a lump in his throat and the audit committee breathing down his neck. He walked up the front steps, slow, like the air had gotten heavier, and reached for the doorbell. It wasn't there. Instead, taped to the wooden frame, hung a cream-colored card in my handwriting, thick, deliberate ink. Do not disturb. This property is under legal observation. Please contact via official channels. Underneath, a small envelope, his name on the front. Nothing else. He looked around like maybe someone was filming him. Then he took the envelope, held it for a moment, and opened it with fingers that weren't as steady as they used to be. Inside, a single typed page. My old company letterhead, outdated, but still official. To whom it may concern, this letter confirms that as of date, all active security credentials, digital access, and operational authority previously held by Melissa Langston have been voluntarily relinquished. Furthermore, any future engagement regarding the continuation, restoration, or renegotiation of Contract 49177D must be directed through the originating client, per Section 18C of the Federal Compliance Autonomy Clause. This is not a resignation. This is a realignment. Respectfully, Melissa Langston, Primary Security Officer of Record, 2008-2025. He read it 3 times. The sentence that hit hardest wasn't even the bolded one. It was that last line. This is not a resignation. This is a realignment. That's when it sunk in. She wasn't coming back. Not to him. Not to the company. Not to the board he'd once bragged she quietly anchored like duct tape behind the drywall. He turned back toward his car, papers still in hand. A neighbor waved politely from across the street. He pretended not to see. As he climbed into the Escalade, a single phrase kept echoing in his mind. Something she'd said once during a risk briefing back in 2015. Don't mistake silence for loyalty. Silence just means I'm building something I don't plan to explain. He'd laughed back then. He wasn't laughing now. The lobby at Redford Defense wasn't made for show. It was made to intimidate. No glass walls or indoor plants, just granite floors, a silent receptionist with federal credentials, and an airlock door that required both a retinal scan and a 2-person code entry. I hadn't been there in over a decade, not because I wasn't welcome, but because trust doesn't require proximity. You keep systems stable, emails clean, timelines tight. That's how you stay in favor. But this time, they wanted me in the room. A black sedan picked me up that morning. No badge, no escort, just a quiet ride to a quiet building where names weren't spoken out loud. I didn't bring a laptop. Didn't need to. Everything I needed was already in my head or in the encrypted key vault on my wrist drive. They knew that. They escorted me to conference room 6B. No glass, no nameplates, just 4 people already seated. Redford himself sat at the end of the table. The same man whose voice froze a boardroom days earlier. To his right, Director Shaw from Federal Contract Oversight. To the left, a woman from Internal Defense Audit I hadn't met before, but her posture told me she was someone who only moved when things broke. Melissa, Redford said, standing and extending a hand. Thank you for coming. I shook it. He motioned to the chair across from him. We'll keep this brief. The Wexler firm is no longer viable in its current capacity. Legal's already processing the audit findings. You were never part of the failure, and based on your last 72-hour credential log, you've kept everything clean. I nodded once. Which brings us to this, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside, a consultancy contract. Full scope. Independent. Full clearance. No corporate oversight. No strings. In short, Redford said, we want you to take over direct operational oversight of contract 49177D, not as their employee, not as ours. As a sovereign compliance consultant, you'll answer only to us. No pitch, no flattery, just a solution to the mess they watched spiral in real time. I read through it once, then again. Then I looked up. I want one clause added. Redford raised an eyebrow. I bring my own team. 3 people, all vetted. I train them myself, and they answer only to me. Approved, he said immediately. And the Wexler firm? I asked, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see it said. Director Shaw cleared her throat. Blacklisted. Effective last Friday. Internal memo already circulated. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just nodded once and slid the folder back. Then we're aligned. Redford stood. You'll have your first transfer deposit within the hour. We'll brief your new team tomorrow. Let us know if you want a private office or not. I stood and shook hands. As I walked out of the room, the weight I'd carried for 17 years didn't vanish. It just redistributed. Lighter now. Cleaner. They didn't need a legacy figurehead. They needed the architect, the one who knew where every risk was buried and how to keep it quiet. And now? I didn't work for the house that broke itself trying to replace a firewall with a family name. I worked for the client directly, at my table, on my terms. 1 week later, at exactly 4:03 a.m., the last flicker of access died inside the Wexler firm. The federal systems updated in silence. No alarms, no warning banners. Just line after line of terminal text quietly confirming the inevitable. Credentials set, WXR Geo of Con, revoked. Then the secondary sets. Then the tertiary backups. One by one, the company's clearance tokens were decoupled from the central grid. At 4:09 a.m., a compliance officer at Redford Defense verified the purge with a single line. All access revoked. Non-operational status confirmed. Contract isolation complete. By 7:30, it hit the Wexler inbox. No subject line, no introduction. Just a formal dispatch from the Department of Federal Procurement Operations with 4 words that detonated quietly in the boardroom. You are no longer authorized. Connor was the first to speak, but it wasn't yelling. No chest pounding, no slogans about pivoting, just a pale whisper. Does that mean we're out? No one answered. They didn't have to. Legal closed their laptops. 2 board members quietly collected their notes and left. No eye contact. Just the polite efficiency of people distancing themselves from a terminal diagnosis. Robert Wexler sat at the head of the table, hands steepled, eyes fixed on the wall, not even blinking, like if he stayed still long enough, the building might forget he built it. Across town, in a different office, modest, efficient, newly painted in a shade of slate that didn't scream for attention, I logged into my new system. New protocols, new badge, new name on the door, Langston Stratsec, small team, big precision. A ping came through at 8:22 a.m., the first wire transfer. 7 figures, immediate, clean. I didn't smile, just noted it and moved on. The real reward wasn't the money, it was the silence. No more babysitting legacy egos. No more watching my work diluted by nepotism. No more warning emails ignored by SUAs who thought PowerPoint was policy. Now I called the shots. Not loudly, not publicly, just definitively. The old firm? They could still sell branding packages to mid-tier logistics firms in Ohio if they wanted. But defense clearance, federal contracts, tiered security systems built on trust, compliance, and years of silent accuracy, that door was closed. Permanently. As I sipped my coffee and scrolled through the new onboarding brief from Redford's counter-intel wing, I thought about the line Robert once used when introducing Connor to the team. My son is the future. Maybe so. But you don't get to replace a firewall with a family photo. Not in this business.